I bought my brother a house for $770,000. It had 4 bedrooms, a 2-car garage, and a yard with maple trees. He remembered where his mother had lived downstairs. He held his wedding there. I wasn't invited. My name was on the title deed. The house belonged to him, not me. While they were waiting for the cake at the house I had paid for, I was on the phone with the real estate agent. What the bride did when she found out silenced all the family members she loved. I bought a house for my brother, and he invited me over. Welcome to the drama of the quiet story. I'm Ingrid, 32, an accountant from Asheville, North Carolina. For 10 years, I've been the breadwinner for my family, paying the bills, covering expenses, and buying my brother a house he couldn't afford. This is the story of not receiving the invitation I paid for, and what happened when I returned. If you gave more than you received, please register and leave a comment. My mother, Eleanor, died at the age of 22 from pancreatic cancer. 8 weeks after her diagnosis, she died at the funeral. She was 53. My father, Roy, sat in the bench the night of the funeral and gave me a beer bottle opener, and I don't think he ever fully recovered. Derek was 19, and he'd sleep until noon, calling for his mother when he wanted lunch. Someone had to turn on the lights. Someone had to pay the mortgage on the family home in Laurel Ridge. Someone had to drive Derek to college and back when he dropped out after 6 weeks. That person was me. I worked 2 jobs, answering phone calls at a tax preparation office during the day and stocking shelves at a food warehouse outside Asheville at night. I thought I could make a decent living by solving other people's problems, so I enrolled in evening classes to get a degree in accounting. For 4 years, I finished college at the age of 26 without any student debt because I paid my tuition semester after semester from a savings account in the Shoebox app on my phone, transferring between $40 and $60 whenever I could. At that time, I was sending Derek $300 a month for rent, groceries, gas, and weekly emergencies. My mother told me before she died, sitting on her hospital bed, her glasses perched on her head as if she were about to take stock. "Take care of your brother. You're strong." I took her words literally. Perhaps too literally. But when the most precious person in the world asks you for something in their final moments, you don't negotiate the terms or ask for a receipt. You carry it with you, even when it weighs you down at 3 in the morning. Derek wasn't a bad person. I want to make that clear. He was like a little brother to me, and he had my mom's smile. When he was 13, he used to bring me hot chocolate while I was studying because he said my brain needed energy. The problem was that Derek didn't understand the connection between effort and results because I was paving the way for him. He started working as a waiter at the age of 20 and stayed there for 8 months before quitting because his manager did not respect his ideas. He then turned to selling used cars, but was fired a year later for falsifying car speed data during sales, which he described as creative accounting, like accountants do, and I personally find that disgusting. Then she started working in a warehouse. 6 months. She quit because the hours were too much. They started at 7 a.m. Every time the phone rang, "Ingrid, I'm going to lose part of my paycheck this month." That part of my paycheck meant $400. That part of my paycheck meant paying the rent, the electricity bill, and the truck payment he couldn't afford. I was sending him. Always. Derek wasn't bad. He didn't have to be good. Because I was always there to make up for it. That's the problem with being someone's support. After a while, they stop looking at that support. They just look at the sky below them and think they're flying. My dad made it worse. Roy would call me and say, "Your brother's having a hard time." If only Derek's adult life hadn't been a series of beautiful, recurring crises. Roy never asked Derek to solve them. Roy never sat down and said, "Son, your sister is 26 and supporting 2 families on an accountant's salary." Roy took another Budweiser beer and said, "It'll help you." Derek didn't understand. My father retired from the textile mill at the age of 58. It wasn't his choice. His knees were weak, and the company offered him a salary, which Roy accepted because he didn't have the strength. He received a small pension and Social Security benefits. He kept the old house in Laurel Ridge, a 3-bedroom cottage that my mother had decorated with shop curtains and window boxes full of sunflowers, and let it slowly crumble around him. Peeling paint, dripping taps, empty flower boxes. Every night, the same routine. Sofa, remote, beer, bed. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't abusive, just as if no one had cut the power cord when Eleanor died, and she'd been running on the leftover electricity ever since. It flickers, but it's not fully lit. I loved Derek in a way that required no action. Derek was loud. Derek was present. Derek needed things. And I felt close to someone who had forgotten what true closeness meant, that things need things. I was the complete opposite. I didn't need anything from Roy. I called him on Sunday. I asked him about his blood pressure. When the truck needed a water pump, I sent him a check. I was the unseen infrastructure. The plumbers and electricians who built the house while everyone else admired the paint color. My father didn't hate me. He forgot I existed. To be honest, it hurts more. Hate is a relationship. Hate means someone has to look at you to have time to form an opinion. Roy looked at me as if I were a window overlooking a beautiful view, a window he wasn't really focused on. Derek hugged me and received phone calls and questions like, "How is my daughter?" There was a silence between Sunday's recordings and the vague assumption that Ingrid was okay, because Ingrid was always present. 2 years earlier, Derek had lost his job at the warehouse and been evicted from his apartment that same month. Apparently, he was 3 months behind on rent and had been hiding the bills under his bed, like a child hiding fake money in his bag. Roy called me while I was crying. I was crying, of course. It was the first time I'd heard that voice since the funeral. He said, "Your brother's away, Ingrid. He's sleeping in the van. I went to Laurel Ridge that weekend." Derek was asleep in his pickup truck, parked in Roy's yard, eating a burrito from a gas station, still looking like a golden retriever waiting for something good. I could have given him money for another apartment. First, a security deposit, maybe a lease. But I'd been fixing Derek's roof for 10 years, and I was sick of it. I found a house in Laurel Ridge, 4 bedrooms, a 2-car garage, and lots of maple trees, listed for $795. I negotiated until it was $770. I forced a woman who cooked her own lunch every day and drove a 2014 Honda Civic with a cracked dashboard to pay $154,000, her savings of 8 years. I registered the sale in my name. "Here's the deal. This is where you'll live," I said, sitting at Roy's kitchen table where the purchase agreement had been signed. "Your monthly payment is $3,900. If you have a stable job for 2 years and make all your payments on time, I'll transfer the title to you." Derek nodded like he'd been handed a golden ticket. He shook my hand and hugged me. The following Tuesday, he moved into his house and told his friends, neighbors, and everyone he knew, "Finally, I'm home." He didn't mention my name once. Caitlin Torres entered Derek's life about a year after he moved in. She was 27 years old, an intensive care nurse at Mission Hospital in Asheville, and possessed the bright, serene calm that comes from people who fight for their lives on 12-hour shifts, then drive home through nonstop traffic. She graduated from nursing school, and there were no shortcuts to making a living and supporting her family. Her parents, Gloria and Marco, ran a landscaping business in Hendersonville, and her sister, Sophia, was finishing her teaching degree at Western Carolina University. Real people, real people. Derek brought Caitlin home for the first time on a Saturday afternoon, and I know this because she called me the night before to make sure I wasn't just passing through. I could see it from the front door. The kitchen with the granite countertops I'd chosen, the master bedroom with its spacious walk-in closet, and the backyard with its maple tree. "This is my house," he said, and Caitlin believed him. How could she not? She was living in a beautiful home with a smiling, proud man, unaware that there was a deed to the property in a filing cabinet in Asheville, under a different name. 2 weeks later, I visited the place. Caitlin was there. A wonderful, straightforward woman. She shook my hand and said, "Derek is so proud of what he's accomplished here. It's amazing." I looked at Derek, and he looked at the floor. Later, after Caitlin had left, I asked him to tell her the truth. He leaned against my granite desk and said, I will when the time is right. The timing was never right, and it never will be. Because the truth is, Derek was just an ordinary person, and in the end, he found someone extraordinary. 8 months later, Derek proposed to me, getting down on one knee under a maple tree. Caitlin said yes. I got a call from Roy on Tuesday night. This was the clearest thing I'd heard in years. Your brother Ingrid is getting married. Do you trust him? I believed it. But what I didn't believe was the plan. The wedding would be at home. The ceremony would take place in the backyard under a maple tree. Caitlin loved that tree. She'd told everyone it was the first time Derek had ever told her he loved her, and that she wanted to exchange vows somewhere they could build a family and a life together. The Torres family returned home for dinner. Gloria and Marco drove from Hendersonville, while Sophia came from Kolohi. I paid for dinner with my credit card, and they sat in the living room, ate at the table I had set up, and told Derek how beautiful his house was. Marco shook Derek's hand and said, "The man who can buy a house like this is the man who can take care of my son." Derek said thank you. He said nothing else. I drove to Laurel Ridge 6 weeks before the wedding. I sat Derek and Roy down at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd written the purchase agreement 2 years earlier. I said, "Tell her the truth. Before the wedding, she needs to know." Derek folded his arms. "This isn't the time." Roy lifted his head from his Budweiser. "Your brother knows what he's doing." The windows were open, and my jaw was so clenched I could hear his limbs talking over the radio. For 6 weeks. The call came on Wednesday. When Derek's name rang, I was at my desk reviewing the roofing company's bills. I picked up the phone, expecting another question. Perhaps about food delivery fees. Or maybe I'd ask if the property insurance covered liability for accidents, because Derek didn't know the answer, and because he didn't know that the property wasn't his, and that he didn't have insurance on it. He said calmly and composedly, "Hello, I just called to ask about the weather. Listen, Caitlin and I went through the guest list, and we're going to keep it short. Just close family." I let that sentence hang in the air between us. I let it breathe. I said, "Derek, I'm your sister." He said, "I know, but this is Caitlin's day, and we want it to be a day for a close friend, and honestly, you two aren't that close. This is going to be weird." I hung up. I sat there for 11 minutes. I knew it, because the time on my screen was 2:14 to 2:25, then I called Roy. "Dad, Derek says I'm not invited to the wedding." Silence. Then a low voice started. "It's just for immediate family, you know?" It was my dad, the man I'd been sending checks to for 10 years. The man I paid for the water pump. The man I'd forgotten about. I lived until something broke down. I said, "Did you get it, Dad?" And I did. I hung up, and 3 minutes later Derek texted me. A short line and a yellow smiley face. "For immediate family only," then followed by a little smiley emoji, telling me the restaurant was full and I should try the one nearby. I sat at my desk. The roofing company's bills were still displayed on the screen. I minimized the spreadsheet window. I opened the bottom drawer where I keep my personal documents, the mortgage papers, the title deed, and the home inspection report, with my signature on each page. I picked up the phone. I called Helen Park at Park Estate. "Helen, I'd like a property listing." I gave her the address. She opened the listing. "Ingrid, this is the house your brother lives in." "Yes. Are you sure?" "I've never been sure of anything. Only close family." "Okay. Close family knows who the registered owner is on the title. If you've given someone everything you have, money, time, savings, sleep, and they still haven't got a place at the table, you know exactly what that emoji feels like. I know the feeling of being decided by those closest to you that you're not close enough to stay with them. If you've ever been in that situation, don't hit the like button yet, because this story is just beginning. Helen Park was 61 years old and had worked in real estate in Western North Carolina for 30 years. She wasn't the type of person who had trouble breathing, but when I walked into her office the next morning with the deed, mortgage statement, and title insurance document, she looked at me over her glasses and said, "Explain it again." "I bought the house 2 years ago. The deed is in my name. My brother lives there. There is no lease. There is no written agreement of any kind. There's only a verbal agreement that Derek would make the mortgage payments and get the title transferred. Derek hasn't done that because he hasn't worked for more than 5 months in the last 2 years since he moved in. I also covered all the payments from Asheville. Helen filed the paperwork. Ingrid. North Carolina requires 30 days notice before a tenant can be evicted. Even without a lease? I know. The wedding's in 4 weeks. I looked. I see. You want to list the property? Today. Notice? By registered mail. Send it today. She opened the MLS system on her computer. 4 bedrooms, double garage, maple tree, Laurel Ridge. Helen has done the bidding. We can list the house for $785. Strong property market. I finalized the sale agreement at 10:47 a.m., sitting in Helen's office sipping black coffee and enjoying the complete mental clarity that comes with pushing boundaries with people who might be close to me. A registered letter, a notice to vacate the property within 30 days, was sent that day to Derek Myers at the property address. Sincerely, Ingrid Marie Myers, owner. Marcus Webb was an Asheville real estate attorney with a distinguished office, a collection of ties, and a man who had witnessed every way a family could be torn apart by property and hadn't been surprised by it in 15 years. I sat across from him with the title deed, the mortgage, and the listing agreement. He looked at everything like a surgeon examining an X-ray. The title deed is valid. Sole owner, Ingrid Marie Myers. No mortgages except the one in your name. No co-borrowers. Derek doesn't have a legal title to the property. He's a non-contract tenant. 30 days notice is the correct procedure. He paused and adjusted his tie. Ingrid, I have to ask, are you sure about the deadline? The wedding's in 4 weeks. The notice is due this week. That's 30 days from the date it was sent. That means the notice period ends almost on the wedding day. I know. Marcus leaned back in his chair and looked at me with a look that was neither judgmental nor sympathetic, but something in between. I found it. Helen called that afternoon. The ad was posted at 2 o'clock. They received 3 requests to view it by 5 o'clock. 785. The house was beautiful. I made sure of it when I bought it. Because if I was going to spend all my savings on a gift for my brother, I made sure it was a good one. I looked at it 3 times the first day. Meanwhile, in Laurel Ridge, a registered letter bearing a tracking number was circulating through the mail, requesting proof of delivery. It was likely addressed to someone choosing napkin colors for a wedding at a property they didn't own at the time. Derek and Caitlin were engrossed in the wedding preparations. I know this because I still follow Caitlin on social media. She did nothing wrong, and I had no reason to block a woman who trusted no one but my brother. She posted pictures of her backyard with lights flashing above. She also posted a picture of a maple tree with a white fabric arch being built beneath it. Boomerang Derek hung a sign on the door that read, "Welcome to our eternal home," and I stared at it for a long time. The Torres family drove in from Hendersonville the following weekend. Gloria and Sophia helped Caitlin set up the decorations in the dining room. Marco took Derek around the house, checked the fence, and discussed where to put the portable bar for the reception. I saw Derek there, his hands in his pockets, shaking his head, pretending to be a hard-working, successful homeowner. It took me a while to save up, Derek told Marcus. I knew that because I had a graphic that showed it. Caitlin, my fiancé worked so hard for this house, our dream home. I'm going to close the application. I'm going to open the mortgage statement. The payment is due in 12 days, and it's $3,900. I wanted to pay it because the house is still mine, the loan is still mine, and Derek hasn't missed a payment in 4 months. Amidst these adjustments, Caitlin reminded me. I know this because Sophia posted a story about me. Caitlin asked about Derek's sister. I want to meet her, she said. Derek shrugged. We're not close. We're not close. 3 days after I sent my registered mail, my roommate was in the back of a mail truck on I-26. Helen arrived on Thursday. Cash offer, $779. Buyer wants to close the deal within 2 weeks. I was sitting in my apartment, a 1-bedroom flat in West Asheville, with a window overlooking the parking lot, and a kitchen so small I had to turn aside to open the refrigerator. My brother was planning my wedding while I was finalizing a $3,900 mortgage for a 4-bedroom house in Laurel Ridge. Ingrid, are you here? I'm here. Take the offer. The 2-week closing period means we'll be getting married on a Saturday. Which Saturday? Helen paused. We're getting married on a Saturday. I did the math. Sale price $779,000. Remaining mortgage value $590,000. Closing costs, commissions, and transfer taxes, about $34,000. My net worth, about $155,000. My initial deposit was $154,000. I'd be right back at square one, except I'd spent 2 years trying to pay off the mortgage Derek had taken out. That's what I thought, of course. But $155,000 in my account was better than $770,000 in a house that had become a witness to my brother's lies. I said, "Go ahead," and we set off. "I'll get the paperwork ready." I hung up. I looked around my apartment. The view of the parking lot, the kitchenette, and the corner office where I work as a freelance accountant on weekends to cover my salary and pay Derek's mortgage. I didn't sell the house to punish my brother. I sold it because it was mine. Because 2 years ago, I sat alone in the land registry office, signed every document, summarized my entire financial life in large numbers, and handed over a bank check. I did everything myself. It was my house. They let me sell it. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, remembering Derek bringing me hot chocolate when I was 13 and in school. I remember crying at school because the children said his shoes were old. His mother would sit in his lap and say, "These shoes helped you get to me this morning, making them the best shoes in the world." I remember him standing at his mother's grave when he was 19, dressed in mismatched clothes, looking like a child in his father's. I put my arm around him and promised to take care of him. The maple tree in that garden. He chose the house partly because of that tree. He said it reminded him of where his mother used to sit in Roy's garden, reading her newspapers on summer nights as the fireflies came out. I was about to call Helena. I said, "Cancel the offer, I'll figure something out." Then I picked up the phone and went back to Derek's message. "This is for immediate family only." A smile spread across his face. That little yellow circle, laughing and twisting, had turned 10 years of sacrifice into a minor issue. I hung up. I turned off the lights. The deal was done. The sale was complete. If Derek wants to stand under that maple tree and take his vows on foreign land, that's his business. But it was my name that was crossed out of the deed at the judge's office, not his, and I had the right to decide when my name would be removed from the document I signed and paid for in full. I slept soundly afterward. It was my first full night's sleep in weeks. The following night, I took the file for my first purchase out of my filing cabinet. I hadn't opened it since the deal was finalized 2 years prior. Everything was there, organized in the colored dividers I use for all my financial information, because I'm an accountant, and that's what accountants do. Page 1, Purchase Agreement. Buyer, Ingrid Marie Myers. The address listed is my apartment address in West Asheville. Signature, date, and initials on each page. Page 2, Home Inspection Report. 26 pages. My signature at the bottom of each page. I remember the inspector, his name was Dale. He smelled of coffee and had an idea for a skylight. I remember standing alone in an empty house, wandering through the rooms, checking the windows, opening every cupboard. Derek wasn't there. My father wasn't there. Just me and Dill, and a piece of paper. The third part of it was a deposit slip. $154,000, a bank check from my First Citizens account. The cashier asked if I was buying the house for myself, and I said, "For my brother." She smiled and said, "That's the best thing I've heard all week." Schedule 4, Insurance Policy. Sole owner, Ingrid Marie Myers. No co-owners, no username. Just me. I sat at my desk in my 1-bedroom apartment, these documents in my hands, proof of every dollar I'd earned, saved, and received. Derek's message read, "This is for immediate family only." Immediate family. But the immediate family didn't sit in the owner's office. The immediate family didn't sign 26 pages of inspection reports. They didn't hand over a bank check representing 8 years of prepackaged lunches and weekend freelance work. the sight of the cracked Civic dashboard and the parking lot. I bought a house for my brother. He invited me over. The paperwork shows everything. The registered mail arrived on Tuesday. I know the exact time because my phone rang at 11:23 a.m. with a delivery confirmation message from the U.S. Postal Service. 14 minutes later, Derek called. I let him hang up. Then he called again. I let him hang up. I let him hang up. I let him hang up. He called me a third time, and when I didn't get an answer, I turned on my phone. What is this? You can't sell my house. This is a joke, isn't it? Call me now. I waited an hour. Then I texted. It wasn't your house. Watch what happens. 20 minutes of silence, then you're accused of treason. I didn't reply. Derek called Roy. Roy called me. I picked up the phone because I wanted to hear what my father would say when the foundation's flaws started to show. Ingrid, your brother is upset. He says he's going to sell the house. I'm the one who's going to sell it. You can't do this. It's the house. It's my house, Dad. My name's on the title. I've paid a deposit. My mortgage. Your mother's furious with you. I let go of him. I let him sit for so long that he fell onto my chest. Then I told him my mother was reading the document. Roy hung up. I put him on the table. I don't know what happened that evening at Laurel Ridge. Derek would pace the living room, bumping into the wall or sit under a maple tree, trying to understand how the safety net had suddenly disappeared. All I know is that he made a decision. He decided not to tell Caitlin. He decided to bet that I'd cheat on him, that I wouldn't sell the house 2 weeks before the wedding, and that my sister, whom I'd known for 10 years, would stop him again. He lied inadvertently. During the week of the wedding, 2 parallel timelines, separated by 68 miles. In Laurel Ridge, Caitlin was busy arranging flowers, white roses, gypsophila, and eucalyptus branches. She posted a video of her garden, rows of white chairs, a fabric archway under a maple tree, and a hand-painted Best Day sign leaning against the fence. She looked happy. She was very happy. I felt something complicated about this. A feeling I didn't use the direct word for because Caitlin hadn't done anything wrong, and the roadside bomb wasn't meant for her. I sat in Marcus Webb's office in Asheville on Wednesday and signed the paperwork to finalize the sale. The asking price was $779,000. The buyers were a retired couple from Charlotte who wanted to spend a weekend in the mountains. The deal was to be finalized on Saturday. The title transfer, the sales contract registration, everything. Saturday was also the deadline for the buyers to prepare their funds and for the mortgage insurance company to file its claim. Helen sent her team to set up the sale sign Saturday evening at 5 p.m. The sale ceremony took place at 3 p.m. I signed every page and Marcus notarized it. The seller's mortgage insurance agent submitted the necessary paperwork for registration on Saturday. I drove home. I made dinner, fried chicken, brown rice, and steamed broccoli, the same dish I make every Wednesday because I can manage on a daily basis. I sat alone at the kitchen table, thinking about how Caitlin used to make homemade roses for strangers on weekends. 2 different schedules. 2 women who didn't know each other very well. We were doing what we thought was right. We lived 68 miles apart. One of us was going to have a tough Saturday. I knew who it would be. It wasn't me. And I wasn't proud of it. But I wasn't disappointed either. The Friday before the wedding, 7 p.m. There was a knock on my apartment door, quickly and loudly. When I opened the door, Derek was standing there, wearing a crumpled polo shirt, unshaven, with red eyeliner. He'd driven an hour and a half from Laurel Ridge. "Please," I said. "The wedding's tomorrow." I stepped aside and let him in. He looked around my apartment. The garage window, the cramped kitchen, the office with the filing cabinet. For a brief moment, something flashed across his face, perhaps embarrassment, but it quickly faded. "You can't do this to me. It's over. The house was sold yesterday." He opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. Sold? To whom? To a couple from Charlotte. The sale is finalized tomorrow. Tomorrow is my wedding. I know that. He gripped the back of my office chair. "My mother is ashamed of you." I saw my brother, whom I fed, cared for, protected, and looked after for 10 years, living in my apartment, which is less than a quarter the size of the house I bought for him, and I said to myself that I was ashamed of our late mother. I told him that my mother was ashamed of both of us, but at least I wasn't the one lying. His face changed, his beauty vanished, as if someone had stabbed him. I'll tell everyone you're insane. I'll tell Caitlin you're envious and spiteful and trying to ruin my life. Say what you will, Derek. The judge's office has the truth. It's all documented in the public records. It's over. The chain rattled so violently that I slammed the door shut. I locked it behind me. I sat at my desk. I opened the roofing company's records. I had work to do. It was a Saturday morning in June in the Carolina Mountains, 70 degrees Fahrenheit at 9 a.m. It's the kind of day that makes you understand why people move here. In Laurel Ridge, Caitlin Torres was still getting ready in her master bedroom of her house, which had only 12 hours left to move into. Her sister Sophia was doing her hair. Gloria was adjusting her dress. The women from Torres and Beijing laughed and took pictures, and I think that's wonderful, because Caitlin deserves a beautiful morning. Back in Asheville, I went to work. Saturday clients, 2 small projects that require monthly subscriptions. I was sitting at my desk in the tax office, processing invoices, reconciling bank accounts, sipping my black coffee, not thinking about the maple tree. Helen texted me at noon. The sold-out sign would be up at 5 o'clock. The team would be there. I understand. The party was at 3 o'clock, I replied. I knew this because Caitlin had posted the schedule on her social media accounts weeks earlier. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Yes, with a heart emoji. At exactly 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, under a maple tree in my backyard, and for 2 more hours, Derek and Caitlin exchanged vows. Yes, yes. They exchanged rings. They kissed. Applause. Gloria cried. Marco shook Derek's hand. Sophia threw flower petals. The photographer captured it all. The arch, the tree, the chairs, the bride and groom, the golden afternoon light filtering through the maple leaves. They were married in the garden I paid for, at the ceremony I attended alone, in front of the house I bought at the age of 8, under the tree I loved. And none of those seated in the white chairs knew that the woman who had bought all of this was 68 miles away, busy sorting out the bills. Imagine someone saying yes to a house that has your name on every document, deed, mortgage, insurance, and inspection report, and then realizing they chose that house as the backdrop for their love story and choosing to exclude you from it. If you know someone who was excluded from a story they themselves created, click like. If you're wondering what happened when the for sale sign went up, listen carefully. The reception started around 4 p.m. The dimly lit backyard featured a mobile bar where a man named Marco was serving champagne to a man he believed was celebrating his daughter's happy marriage. Food vendors had set up stalls along the perimeter. A 3-tiered cake was decorated with slices of ham, a slice of macaroni and cheese, white buttercream frosting, and lavender sprigs. Caitlin wore a short dress for the party. Derek loosened his tie. Photographers strolled around the courtyard, snapping candid shots. Gloria laughed as she sipped champagne, Sophia danced with her cousin, and Roy sat on a chair at the edge of the party, holding a glass of Budweiser, looking at his son with pride, but perhaps just relief that someone else was now working for Derek. The celebration began around 4:30. Gloria stood up and said, "They're building their life in this beautiful house. To Derek, who worked so hard to give my daughter her own space, and to Caitlin, who deserves it all." Everyone raised their glasses. Derek smiled. I think it was his most beautiful smile. She was the one who had saved him from trouble since 6:50. As the dancing continued in the yard, Derek pushed Caitlin in her wheelchair under the lights, and the maple tree cast its long shadow on the grass. Helena's group arrived in a white Park Realty van in front of the house. They headed towards the edge of the lawn. They put up the banner, white background, dark blue text, and Helena's logo at the top. The tickets were completely sold out. The ticket was placed on the ground at 5:07 p.m. No one in the arena noticed it. They were too busy celebrating, too busy building a future on a foundation that had been sold beneath their feet. The party ended around 7 p.m. Guests began arriving at the house, carrying their bags and jackets, and hugging the bride and groom on the balcony. Most walked past the sign without even glancing at it. The air was thick with champagne, ham, and a wonderfully festive atmosphere. But 23-year-old Sofia Torres, who spends most of her time online, wanted to post a comment on her sister's wedding day, so she stopped on the sidewalk to take a selfie with the house behind her. She picked up the phone and placed the photo in the frame, smiled, glanced at the preview, then looked at what was in the yard. She put the phone down and walked over to the sign, reading it twice. Derek's voice, still looking at the sign, had a distinctive tone, the kind of tone one uses when asking a question they think has the answer. "Derek, is there a sign on your garden?" The conversation on the terrace stopped. Marco set down his champagne glass. Gloria turned around. Suddenly, Derek, who was standing in the doorway with his arm around Caitlin, went pale. It wasn't gradual, as if someone had reached out and cut off the blood supply to his face. "Which sign?" he asked. Then they all moved into the yard. The wedding procession, the entire Torres family, Roy with his Budweiser beer, and the photographer who was still snapping pictures, because photographers never stop. They were all gathered in front of an abandoned house, looking at a black, white, and blue sign that read, "For sale," large enough to be read from the street. The courtyard lights were still on, the cake was on the table. Mabel paid no attention. Caitlin wore her reception dress, a short white lace dress with a sign she had worn, and was barefoot because she had danced the first dance. She read the sign aloud, slowly, as if she were reading a sign in the intensive care unit, and checking the numbers. "For sale, Park Realty, Helen Park, real estate agent." She turned. Everyone was looking at her. Derek was standing on the balcony, his hands at his sides, his face as pale as a page of old paper. "Derek." Her voice was quiet. The voice of a woman in the ICU telling families that their loved ones haven't arrived yet, and she did so clearly and compassionately, without urgency. "Are you trying to tell me something?" "Wrong. This isn't the place. There must be some misunderstanding." "Whose name is Derek in this house?" Silence. Not empty silence, but absolute silence. The spirit of failure accumulates on top of every lie, swaying like a puppet in a restaurant kitchen. "Who is Derek?" Gloria took a step forward and placed her hand on Caitlin's shoulder. Marco was behind her, his hands clenched. He didn't mean to hurt anyone, he just needed to hold on to something. "Is there something you want to tell us?" Gloria asked, her voice trembling. The mother's voice trembled as she realized her daughter might have married a liar. Derek opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. "I can explain." That's what people say when they can't explain. The lie yet to be invented is a universal preface. Caitlin stood barefoot on the closed lawn, wearing her wedding dress. "It's a scam," Derek said. He was speaking so fast now, like his magic engine was running on smoke, spitting out words so fast that the part of his brain responsible for credibility hadn't checked any of them. "Someone's running a scam. Fake signal. Wrong drug. I'm going to call the police." Caitlin didn't move. "Then show me the document." "What?" "The document, Derek. If this is your house, show me the document. You have the document there, don't you? In a filing cabinet? In a safe? Or in a drawer?" Derek's mouth is closed. He doesn't make a sound. "Show me the document. At the bank. They keep the first one." "No, they don't. I bought my car. I saw how the document works." He showed me the document. He couldn't. He couldn't show her the document because it was in a filing cabinet in a one-bedroom apartment in West Asheville. The landlord was an accountant who organized everything, so it was in a color-coded file under Laurel Ridge's ownership. Caitlin looked at it, and I think that was the moment the data wall broke down. It wasn't by chance, but a slow, painful change. I've seen the worst lies, Derek. Patients swearing they'll never drink alcohol while their livers deteriorate, family members saying they'll be fine if they don't drink. I know how they feel. I stopped. Now I looked at her. Derek frowned. Gloria was crying. Marco was hugging her. Sophia was standing beside her with her phone, not filming, just standing there, because watching such scenes on screen is sometimes awful. Somewhere behind the group, Roy sat on a park bench with a bottle of beer, silent, because silence was the only safe option for him. If the second loan is fraudulent, the bank will cancel it. But the first mortgage, which I paid off, if it wasn't paid, the property would be foreclosed on. It would be paid off. I stopped making the payments. Alan looked at me, not with condemnation, but with the look of someone who knows math. Then the house would be put up for auction, maybe in 6 months. I shook my head. That day, I filed an identity theft report with the Federal Trade Commission from my laptop in my apartment. I froze my credit history with all 3 credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. I wrote a letter of objection, printed it, signed it with my real signature, and mailed it to Valley First Credit Union by registered mail. Then I made dinner, a grilled cheese sandwich and tomato soup, and sat on the couch and ate it in silence. 60 to 90 days. I waited 32 years. Alan's investigation moved faster than I expected. Vail was initially complicit. They had their own obligations to attend to, and the falsified notary statement was a problem for them as well. Within 3 weeks, the bank had $47,000. It was transferred from the loan account to a business current account at another bank, registered to G&H Ventures, LLC. G. Legart, H. Leholt, Darren Holt, and Notary Partners. I sent him the distribution records. I read all the financial documents written in pencil on yellow legal paper, slowly at the kitchen table. An $18,000 down payment had been made for a vacant lot in rural Berks County, which had since lost 40% of its value due to a rejected redevelopment application. $22,000 was sent to a Ford F-150 truck registered in Garrett's name, which was listed as a company vehicle in the LLC's records. The remaining $7,000 was allocated for operating expenses. Alan obtained bank statements for these operating expenses. The expenses included 2 trips to Las Vegas, airfare, and hotel accommodations. They also included 6 dinners at Philadelphia restaurants costing less than $100 each, a video game console with 3 controllers, and a monthly membership to a cigar club. My brother used my name to steal $47,000 and spend it on worthless land, a truck to take me to the gas station, and vacations I'll never take. I didn't sleep at the table. I didn't cry. I picked up my pen and added each item to the spreadsheet. Column A, item. Column B, amount. Column C, source. Column D, status. After I finished, I closed my laptop and washed my coffee cup. My brother took everything that had my name on it, and my mother called it the pride of the family. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, with my mortgage application under the reading light. My certified public accountant, CPA, license lay beside it. 2 signatures, 2 versions of my name, written in 2 different handwritings. The signature on my will was mine. Clean, neat, and the prisoner wrote on the left, as I had learned spelling from Mrs. Patterson in the 3rd grade at Millfield Primary School. The signature on the arrest warrant was Garrett's. The letters were written on the right. The space was limited, but the S was slanted to the right. This was a common mistake, like seeing a signature 100 times and not recognizing the handwriting. I remembered 312 checks I had mailed over the past 8 years. Every single one bore my actual signature, written willingly, without thanks, and without any notice. No one in my family studied those signatures. No one held any of them up to the light. No one framed them or kept them. They changed them and forgot about them. But this fake signature of mine was important to them for the first time. They weren't the real ones. They weren't the ones who turned on the lights, or who plastered the ceiling, or whose frank insurance was valid. Fake. He paid $47,000 for a truck in Las Vegas. That was the signature required. I stared at the 2 names engraved on the headlights for a long time. A promissory note for $47,000. I folded the application and put it back in the envelope, then placed it in file 814 Maple, and put the file in my desk drawer. Then I turned off the light, brushed my teeth, and went to bed. I didn't dream. I do dream sometimes. But the next morning, at 5:15, I felt a clarity of mind I hadn't felt in years. No anger, no sadness, no math. Rita and I were sitting in a corner of Calhoun's on High Street. She was eating a club sandwich. I had coffee and chicken noodle soup. She asked me, "What are you going to do?" I replied, "I'm going to get the system working. A report has been filed with the Federal Trade Commission. The credit bureaus are investigating. Alan is running the bank, and my job is done." She asked, "What job is done?" I answered, "Everything. The checks, the vacations, the phone calls, the voicemails from people who think I owe my parents my whole life. I wrote that down. I canceled my car payments since Thanksgiving. The credit freeze went into effect. I filed a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission. I changed the locks on the apartment, not because I thought Garrett was coming, but because this is the old lock Frank installed when I first moved here, and I don't want anything in my life to affect my family. I kept sending voice messages to the files folder, not to torture myself, but because each message served as a document, a template, a test if I needed it. Rita stirred her iced tea. What about the house? The house is going bankrupt. It's going to be auctioned off. So what? I looked at her. She looked at me. Rita is a 54-year-old woman. Harper and Webb built it from a folding table in the garage. She knew exactly what it meant to build from scratch in front of people who expected failure. My mother was right about one thing, I said. I was a burden. Not like she said, but I was the burden carrying everything, and I let her down. Rita nodded slowly. She didn't say, okay, or I'm proud of you. She said, I'm finishing up at the store. We have 3 new customers this week. I sat in that restaurant with my manager and said, we're done out loud for the first time. I wasn't angry, I wasn't being dramatic, I was just done. And that's what happens when you're done. You don't feel free immediately. It feels like you're in free fall, but you quickly realize you're not. You no longer care about other people. If that word means anything to you now, keep searching. My phone rang at 11:47 on Tuesday night. I was about to give up, but it was Frank. And Frank doesn't call so late unless Linda is asleep. Sloan. His voice was low. The basement was low, or perhaps he'd gone out onto the porch. I could hear the wind. I know you're angry, he said. I know why. I didn't say a word. I should have said something at that table. I should have said something a long time ago. I'm still silent. The silence isn't his. It's mine. Your mother should have filled it. She had a hard life after you were born. She quit her job at the hardware store. She was the best saleswoman in the area, but she quit because we couldn't afford to care for 2 children. She was never satisfied. That's her story, Dad, not mine. I know. Another silence. This time it was longer. The wind kept blowing from the other side. He left. I know you deserve better than tonight, better than anything. I waited. But you can't leave the house, Sloan. This is all we have. There was the question, the only reason for the call. Not to apologize. Not really. Not to get enough money to get by. He said the right words, but he granted the wrong request. Good night, Dad. Sloan. Good night. I hung up, placed the phone on the table in front of me, pulled the covers up, and looked up at the ceiling. Before he could speak, in that brief moment between I know and but, I heard something I'd never heard him say before. Maybe it was regret, maybe it was the sound of the wind. Before the call ended, he said, "Don't tell your mother I called." He liked that, and I believe him, but he preferred silence. 60 days after Thanksgiving, Valley First Credit Union sent a notice of default to 814 Maple Drive. It took 90 days to rectify the situation, or the bank would begin foreclosure proceedings. Linda didn't tell me directly, but rather through 11 voicemails in one day. The situation was entirely predictable. 9 a.m. Sloan, please call me. I received a message from the bank. 10:15 a.m. This is serious. Your father is very upset. 11:30 a.m. You're tearing this family apart. 1 p.m. God will hold you accountable for this, Sloan. He sees everything. 3:45, his voice trembling. If I hadn't found you. I listened. I recorded the call. I deleted it. Same graph, same bars, same consistent result. Date, February 2nd. Caller, Linda Jurgen. Number of messages, 11. Emotional trajectory, from prayer to accusation to theology to grief. But there was another call that caught my attention that day. Garrett. His voice was different. It was angry, neither firm nor trembling. "Hey," he said, "about the second mortgage on his house with Valley First Bank. Maybe we should talk about that." I immediately understood the tremor in his voice. Garrett wasn't afraid of losing his house. He was afraid of what the bank would discover when he took out the second mortgage. My forged signature. If the bank examines it, they'll find counterfeit money. If they find counterfeit money, they'll find Darren Holt's forged notarization. If they find Darren, they'll find G&H Ventures. If they find G&H Ventures, they'll know where the $47,000 went. Las Vegas, a truck, a gaming console. Talk to Garrett through your lawyer. I hung up. He didn't call back for 6 weeks. January turned into February, and something strange happened. My life settled down. It wasn't empty, it just settled down. That kind of stability that comes when you stop carrying burdens I know so well. When I moved into a house I hadn't been living in for $1,720 a month, my checking account wasn't the same anymore. It grew. I opened an investment account. A simple Vanguard index fund. Nothing special. I bought a real sofa to replace the Goodwill sofa I had from my first apartment. The one with the spring coming out of the left cushion. I signed up for a yoga class at the community center in Lancaster, Tuesday and Thursday evenings. I'd never done yoga before. It turned out I loved it. Rita introduced me to 3 new accounting clients, all small businesses in the area. My freelance income increased by $22,000 a year, and I did something I'd been thinking about for months. I filed a limited liability company in Pennsylvania, Juergens and Associates Consulting. The filing fee was $125. When the certificate of incorporation arrived in the mail, I framed it and hung it on the wall above my desk. It was the first document to bear my name. In a way, it was the first picture of my family. Meanwhile, 25 minutes west, the outline of our house at 814 Maple Street was beginning to appear. The lawn had grown longer because Frank could no longer push the mower on his back, and Garrett said he was too busy with his work. The company was a limited liability company, and its bank account was empty. The utility company cut off service for a week before Frank paid the bill with his own check. The porch light was broken. The flagpole by the door hung sideways with a missing nail. No one had fixed it. Pauline Oates met me at Wawa's one Saturday morning in late February. I was buying coffee and bananas. That was what I usually ate before going to the market. She was a 72-year-old woman, 180 centimeters tall, who had lived near Juergens' house for 31 years. She had watched me grow up. "My dear," she said, placing her hand on my arm near the dairy shop, "I told your mother that you had left them. I told her that you didn't care about them anymore." I stirred the coffee. I heard it. "But I saw you, Sloan. You walked down that street every Saturday morning for years, carrying bags of groceries. I saw you mowing the lawn in July when it was 90 degrees because your father couldn't stand up straight. I saw you holding the turkey out onto the porch on Thanksgiving because you were 23. I know what you did to that family." She clapped her hands. "I know what they did to you." I didn't answer right away. Not because I was too excited, but because I was recalculating. Pauline Oates was the only one who didn't notice. The word got around. Because I hadn't told anyone. I hadn't told anyone except Rita and Alan. But because Millfield has a population of 4,000, and because memories last a long time, people connect the dots. The girl who brought a cake to every party, who donated to every charity event, who secretly paid the church bill for 3 years, not only had she left her family, but the Reverend Whelan had called her the following Sunday. "Is there something you're hiding from us about Sloan?" Linda. "She's selfish, a pastor, the girl who donated to every bakery in the church for 10 years?" Silence. Meanwhile, Darren Holt receives a registered letter from the Pennsylvania State Department. The notary's office is reviewing the case. A Federal Trade Commission report led to an investigation of the bank, and the bank, in turn, filed a report against the notary. Darren called Garrett that afternoon. "I've finished covering your story. Find out for yourself." In late March, the First Valley Credit Union had filed a foreclosure notice with the judge's office. The property was to be auctioned within 30 days. The letter arrived at Maple Drive on Wednesday at 8:14 a.m. Linda read it at the kitchen table and set it aside without saying a word. A few months later, Frank told me she'd sat in the same chair for 2 hours without moving. The house. 4 bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms, built in 1987, the year Frank and Linda married. The kitchen where Linda baked Garrett's birthday cakes, always chocolate, always with his name on them in blue frosting. The living room where the Christmas photo is taken every year. 3 people, 4 at most. The market value is estimated at around $180,000. The first mortgage is $94,000. The second mortgage payment, a result of Garrett's fraud, is $47,000. The accounts are bad and getting worse. Linda called me for the last time. No, she didn't quote any religious verses. She didn't make any accusations, just a voice I'd never heard from her before. Flat, small, empty. Please. I can't help you, Mum. I mean, you can't. I can't. You proved it on Thanksgiving. She was silent for a long time. I could hear the kitchen clock ticking in the background, like a chicken perched on the wall since I was 6. She said, "You'll regret this." But her voice was devoid of any emotion. She spoke because she had nothing else to say. She hung up. She placed the phone on the kitchen table. She glanced at the company's limited certificate of incorporation hanging on the wall. Juergens and Partners Consulting. I had 30 days. I met Alan Marsh at his office in Lancaster on Thursday afternoon. I said, "A preliminary offer. Who can make an offer? Anyone. Individuals, limited liability companies, corporations, cash or certified check. It's a public offer. Can my limited liability company make an offer?" He put his pen down. Juergens and Partners. Consulting? Yes. I've been considering this for a while. There are no legal restrictions. A limited liability company is a separate entity. It has its own tax identification number, its own bank account, and its own operating agreement. Having a last name similar to previous owners is not grounds for disqualification. What is the minimum bid? He was conducting a similar sale on his computer. Foreclosed properties in rural Pennsylvania sell for between 60 and 70 cents on the dollar, or between $110,000 and $125,000. I opened my laptop on the table and showed her my accounts. My personal savings were $89,000, the result of 8 years of living on a modest income and steady investments. My business account with a limited liability company held $45,000, the freelance income I'd been investing in the company since its inception. Rita said she could pay me my year-end bonus of $8,000 up front. My total liquid assets were $142,000. Alan looked at the numbers, then at me. "You can do that too. I know. I've been doing math since Thanksgiving." He leaned forward. "When you buy that house, what will you do with it if you buy it?" Something my mother never did. "What is it?" "I'll make it a welcoming place for people." Then he picked up the pen again. "I'll register the credit card as a bidder. You'll need a bank check on the day of the auction. I'll collect it." We shook hands. It was the most professional handshake of my life, and at the same time, incredibly intimate. Garrett came to my apartment on Sunday night. He didn't call or text. He slammed the door shut just enough to break the lock. I unzipped it. I saw his face through the 3-inch opening, unshaven, with bloodshot eyes, and wearing the same hat he wore on Thanksgiving. "You need to file a report with the Federal Trade Commission. No greeting, no introduction, just charges. If they investigate, I'm going to jail, Sloan. You committed identity theft and bank fraud. These are federal charges, Garrett. I'm not your problem. I'm your brother. You're the stranger who broke my parents up." He shifted his weight, trying a different perspective. As usual. Twisted, charming. It worked with Linda. It didn't work with me. I'm going to get every penny back. It just needs time. With what? Your food truck that hasn't even launched yet? Your crypto wallet? Lautenberg County that lost 40% of its value? He clenched his jaw. The beauty was gone. What was inferior to it would remain inferior. A man who thought he owed something he didn't deserve said calmly, "If you don't let him, I'll tell everyone that you're the reason my parents lost their home. They're thinking about the future. My mom's been telling this story for weeks." He opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. He didn't say a word. I looked at him through the zipper of his pants. My brother, 3 years older than me, 3 inches taller, and older than me in every way. "Good morning, Garrett." I closed the door, opened it, zipped up the zipper, and went back to the couch, where I sat down and picked up the book I'd been reading. I found a used copy of a financial planning guide at the library's secondhand bookstore. I heard him standing behind me in the hall for another 30 seconds before his footsteps disappeared up the stairs. I skipped Sunday Mass at 8 to get away from my family. Linda was there at 10. I thought that was enough. that wasn't the case. On the first Sunday in April, I entered the prayer hall at 7:55 and found Linda in the third row with two church elders, Harold Gregg and Martha Benton. They were waiting for me. "Sloan," Harold said. He was a man in his 70s, a retired teacher with kind eyes and a rich personality. "We asked your mother to come because we believe in reconciling families." I finished by saying, "The Bible says, 'Honor your father and mother.'" I know the verse. Linda folded her arms, raised her chin, and sat in the posture of a woman who thought she had mastered the law. The Bible says, "Fathers, do not make your children angry." Ephesians 6:4. I placed my bag on the chair, and I think he says, "Don't steal." My brother forged my signature on an official document, a $47,000 bond.